to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin. Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories. Tonight you're going to drift into a gentle tale of midnight s'mores by a quiet mountain, where the fire glows softly and the night feels kind and wide. Settle in the way that feels best for you. Let your shoulders drop as if they're melting into the pillow. Let your jaw loosen, your forehead smooth. Notice the steady support beneath you, the simple comfort of being held by bed and blanket, by stillness and safety. Take a slow breath in and let it out like a long, easy sigh. Another breath in, cool and clean, and out, warm and unhurried. If your thoughts are busy, you don't have to chase them away. You can simply let them wander like clouds crossing a moonlit sky. For now, you can rest inside the softness of this moment. Imagine the faint scent of pine on the air. Imagine a hush so gentle it feels like velvet settling around you. Somewhere in the distance, a mountain waits under starlight. Calm and ancient it slopes, dark with evergreens. The world is quiet enough that you can almost hear the night itself breathing. And as you keep breathing slowly, letting each exhale carry you deeper into ease, the story begins to unfold, and you won't have to do anything at all but listen. In a mountain valley tucked between ridges, there was a small, cozy cabin that belonged to no one in particular and to everyone who needed it. It sat where a meadow met the forest, where grasses swayed and pine needles whispered. The cabin's windows glowed faintly, as if they had learned how to hold a little warmth, even when the hearth was dim. Not far from the cabin, a clear stream slid over smooth stones, making a sound like gentle laughter. It was the kind of place where the air tasted clean, where the stars seemed nearer, where time slowed down and took its shoes off at the door. On a calm night, just when the moon had climbed high enough to wash the valley in silver, a traveler arrived along the narrow path that wound through the trees. The traveler's name was Rowan, and though Rowan had walked far enough to feel pleasantly tired, there was no heaviness to it. It was the good kind of tired, the kind that makes a blanket feel like a blessing, and a warm drink feel like a small miracle. Rowan paused near the edge of the meadow, letting the night settle in. The sky was a deep ink blue, scattered with stars so crisp and bright they looked freshly placed. The mountain rose beyond the meadow, quiet and enormous, its silhouette soft against the heavens. A breeze moved through the pines, and the trees answered one another in murmurs. It didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a welcome. The valley seemed to recognize Rowan not as a stranger, but as someone who belonged to the night, the way a spark belongs to flame. Rowan walked toward the cabin, footsteps cushioned by grass and pine needles. There was a faint lantern glow near the porch, not bright, just enough to guide the way. On the porch rail sat a small tin kettle, as if it had been placed there in expectation of tea. A folded wool blanket rested on a chair, and beside it on a simple wooden table was a little bowl of marshmallows, a stack of chocolate squares wrapped in paper, and a bundle of graham crackers tied with twine. Rowan smiled, a slow, sleepy curve of the mouth. The valley offered what was needed, when it was needed, without questions. Inside the cabin, the air was warmer, scented with cedar and the ghost of old campfires. The room was simple, a table, a few chairs, a small shelf with mugs and a jar of honey, a window seat piled with quilts. Everything looked softened by use, as though many people had come here to rest, and their resting had made the place gentler. Rowan set down a pack and moved quietly, not wanting to disturb the hush. A little iron stove sat in the corner, with a few logs ready beside it. On the mantel was a matchbox and a note written in looping, friendly script. It read, "When the night feels like it's holding its breath, light a small fire. Take what you need, leave what you can, and if you'd like, the mountain enjoys midnight s'mores." Rowan's eyes lingered on those last words as if tasting them already. Midnight s'mores. The phrase felt like a secret passed gently from one heart to another. Rowan gathered the marshmallows, chocolate, and crackers from the porch table and carried them inside. Then, with the quiet patience of someone who knows there's no rush, Rowan laid a few logs into the stove and struck a match. The flame bloomed, small and bright, and the sound of it catching was like a tiny sigh of relief. As the fire warmed the cabin, Rowan filled the kettle from a little pitcher of water and set it near the heat. Steam began to curl upward, delicate as a ribbon. The cabin grew cozier by degrees, like a lullaby turning its volume down. Rowan moved to the window and looked out. The meadow lay pale with moonlight. The stream glimmered where it curved through stones. Beyond it, the forest stood tall and still, and above everything, the mountain watched, quiet and steady. When the kettle began to whisper, Rowan poured water into a mug and added a spoonful of honey from the jar. The scent rose, sweet and soothing. Rowan held the mug with both hands, letting warmth seep into palms, and took a slow sip. Outside, the night remained serene, yet there was a feeling in the air, a kind of gentle invitation. The note had mentioned the mountain enjoying midnight s'mores, and Rowan could not help imagining a fire outside, a small circle of light beneath the wide sky, with the mountain nearby like a calm guardian. Rowan pulled on a soft jacket from the pack, wrapped the wool blanket around shoulders, and stepped back onto the porch. The air was cooler out here, but not harsh. It felt crisp and clean, like water from a deep well. The moonlight made everything look tender. Near the edge of the meadow, there was a fire ring, stones arranged in a neat circle, as if they had always been there. Rowan hadn't noticed it at first, but now it seemed obvious, like something that appears as soon as you're ready to see it. Rowan walked toward it, carrying a small bundle of kindling and a few logs. The grass brushed softly against boots. The night smelled of pine and earth and distant water. At the fire ring, Rowan arranged the kindling carefully and struck another match. The flame caught and spread, licking the wood with gentle hunger. Soon the fire was small but steady, a warm orange heart beating in the center of the meadow. Rowan sat on a smooth log placed just right for a seat. The wool blanket was tucked close. The mug of honeyed tea rested near Rowan's knee, steaming faintly, and the simple s'mores ingredients lay on a cloth beside the fire, as if laid out for a quiet ceremony. The flames cast a soft light on Rowan's face and hands. Shadows moved lazily on the grass. Above, the stars looked even brighter now, as though the fire had reminded them how to shine. Rowan found a roasting stick leaned against one of the fire ring stones. It was polished smooth, the kind of stick that had been used many times. Rowan held it, feeling its comforting weight, and slid a marshmallow onto the end. The marshmallow was pale and plump, like a little cloud. Rowan held it over the fire, not too close, letting it warm slowly. The surface began to turn glossy. The marshmallow softened, taking on a gentle glow. As Rowan watched it toast, something quiet shifted at the edge of the meadow. Not a movement that startled, but a change in the way the darkness held itself. Rowan glanced up, and there, near the tree line, the shadows seemed to gather into shapes. Soft, indistinct, more like suggestions than creatures. They were the night's listeners, the valley's gentle company. Perhaps they were just deer standing still, or an owl settling on a branch, or simply the mind noticing patterns. But in this place, it felt equally possible that the forest itself had come closer, curious about the warmth and sweetness. Rowan returned attention to the marshmallow, turning it slowly, patiently. The fire crackled in a friendly way. The marshmallow began to blush golden. A tiny bead of sugar bubbled at the edge. The scent was faint, but unmistakable, warm and sweet, like comfort. Rowan placed a square of chocolate on a graham cracker, then lifted the marshmallow away from the heat. It sagged gently, perfectly, softened. Rowan pressed it onto the chocolate and topped it with another graham cracker, making a tidy little sandwich. The chocolate began to melt almost immediately, its edges softening under the marshmallow's warmth. Rowan held the s'more carefully, feeling how delicate it was, how quickly the warmth transformed it into something tender. The first bite was slow and unhurried. The graham cracker crunched softly, then gave way to gooey marshmallow and melted chocolate. The flavors were simple, familiar, and yet here, under the mountain and the stars, they tasted almost enchanted, like the night itself had added a pinch of wonder. Rowan chewed thoughtfully, watching the flames. Each crackle felt like a tiny story. Each ember rising into the air looked like a brief, glowing wish. After a few bites, Rowan leaned back slightly and looked at the mountain. It stood beyond the meadow, dark and vast. Yet it didn't feel distant. It felt present, like a quiet companion who didn't need to speak, to be reassuring. Rowan imagined the mountain had its own kind of attention, slow and patient. It had watched countless nights like this. Small fires, quiet travelers, soft laughter, whispered dreams. The mountain had witnessed seasons turning, snow settling, wildflowers blooming. It had held the valley gently in its shadow and light. A breeze moved through the meadow, and the fire bent slightly, then straightened. The scent of toasted sugar drifted around Rowan like a sweet scarf. Rowan made another s'more the same careful way. The marshmallow turned slowly over the flames, the golden color deepening. This time Rowan let it toast a little longer, letting the surface darken just enough for a caramelized edge. As Rowan waited, the night seemed to deepen, not in a frightening way, but in a soothing one, like a blanket being pulled up around the world. The sounds grew softer. The stream's song became a distant hush. Even the wind quieted, as if it too had decided to listen. When the marshmallow was ready, Rowan pressed it into another chocolate and cracker stack. The chocolate softened again, and Rowan took a bite, eyes half-lidded with contentment. Then something subtle happened, something so gentle it might have been imagined. The stars overhead seemed to shimmer with a different kind of light, as if one of them had winked. The fire popped softly, sending a small spray of sparks upward, and for a moment the sparks did not rise in their usual scattered way. They drifted together in a slow spiral, like tiny fireflies tracing a pattern in the air. Rowan watched, calm and curious. The spiral moved upward, then unfurled like a flower opening in the dark. The sparks dimmed and vanished, but the shape they had made lingered in the mind. A simple circle, like a promise. Rowan took another sip of tea and felt warmth spread through chest and belly. The blanket around shoulders felt heavier in the best way, grounding and safe. The valley offered a kind of stillness that made thoughts slow down. Any worries that might have followed Rowan up the mountain path seemed too tired to keep going. They drifted away, one by one, like leaves carried downstream. Rowan made a third s'more, but more slowly now, as if each motion was part of a quiet ritual. Place the marshmallow on the stick, hold it near the fire, turn it gently, watch it soften, smell the sweetness, listen to the crackle. The process was soothing, predictable, and in that predictability there was comfort. The night did not ask for anything complicated. It asked only for presence, and even that presence could be soft. As the marshmallow toasted, Rowan noticed the shapes at the edge of the meadow again. They seemed a little closer now, still indistinct. The suggestion of antlers, perhaps, the rounded curve of an animal's back. Or maybe it was simply the way moonlight fell on shrubs and branches. Rowan felt no fear, only the quiet feeling of not being alone, of being part of a larger, kinder world. A world where the forest could watch, and the mountain could listen, and a small fire could be enough. Rowan's marshmallow was ready, golden and gently browned. Another s'more was assembled, another bite taken. The sweetness settled on the tongue and in the heart. It felt like a small celebration for no reason at all, which was the loveliest kind of celebration. Time moved differently here. It wasn't measured by clocks, but by the slow dance of flames and the gradual softening of the body. The night air cooled slightly, but the fire remained steady. The moon shifted almost imperceptibly, painting new silver shapes across the meadow. Rowan leaned forward and warmed hands near the fire. The heat was gentle, not harsh. It soaked into fingers and palms, loosening any last tension. Rowan rolled shoulders once, then let them rest, heavy and relaxed beneath the blanket. Above, the sky felt endless. The stars were scattered like sugar across dark velvet. A faint ribbon of pale light stretched across the heavens, a soft path that made Rowan think of distant places and quiet journeys. Rowan wondered briefly about all the other people who might have sat by this fire ring before. Perhaps a child on a camping trip, eyes wide with wonder. Perhaps an elder who knew the names of the peaks and the patterns of the clouds. Perhaps a lonely traveler who needed sweetness and warmth and a reminder that the world could be gentle. The thought was comforting. It made Rowan feel connected, stitched into a quilt of quiet nights and shared warmth. The fire crackled again, and Rowan noticed something on the ground near the stones, a small pouch tied with a thin ribbon. Rowan picked it up and loosened the knot. Inside was a pinch of something that looked like fine silvery sand. There was another note, smaller than the one on the mantel, tucked inside the pouch. It read, "For a little extra dream." Rowan smiled as if the night had offered a playful secret. With care, Rowan sprinkled just a tiny pinch of the silvery grains into the fire. They did not flare, they did not explode. They simply melted into the flames, and the fire's color shifted for a moment, softening into a cooler glow, like moonlight mixed with ember light. The change was subtle, almost like an illusion, but the atmosphere around the fire felt suddenly even calmer, as if the air had remembered how to be deeply still. The sparks that rose from the fire now drifted upward more slowly, like glowing petals. They floated and turned and faded with unhurried grace. Watching them made Rowan's eyelids feel heavier, like curtains lowering gently. Rowan made another s'more, but now it was less about eating and more about the comforting motion. Toast, turn, wait, press, hold, bite, chew, breathe. The flavors were soothing, familiar, and each bite seemed to sink into Rowan's body like warmth into cold hands. The chocolate melted softly, the marshmallow stretched like a gentle sigh, and the graham crackers tasted of honeyed grain. In the quiet, Rowan began to notice smaller sounds, the faint tick of cooling stones, the hush of grass moving under the breeze, the distant call of an owl like a single note in a lullaby. Even the stream sounded slower, as if it too was winding down for sleep. At the edge of the meadow, a shape stepped forward into the moonlight. This time it was clearer, a deer, slender and still, with ears pricked toward the fire. Its eyes reflected a soft shine. It did not seem afraid. It simply watched, curious and calm. Rowan remained still, honoring the deer's presence. The deer took a slow step, then another, stopping at a respectful distance. The night held both traveler and deer in the same quiet pocket of peace. The deer lowered its head briefly, as if sniffing the air, catching the scent of toasted sugar. Then it lifted its head again, and for a moment, it looked directly at Rowan. There was no demand in the gaze, only a kind of gentle acknowledgement, as if to say, yes, this is a good night for sweetness. Rowan's breath stayed slow and easy. The deer stood a while longer, then turned and stepped back toward the trees, disappearing into shadow as quietly as it had arrived. Rowan felt a soft gratitude, the kind that doesn't need words. Just a warm feeling settling in the chest. The fire continued to glow. The silvery dream grains had turned the flames into something almost velvety, their light softer at the edges. The meadow looked like a calm sea of pale grass, and the mountain beyond looked like a dark island rising out of moonlight. Rowan's body felt heavier now, pleasantly heavy. The warmth of the fire, the sweetness of the s'mores, the gentle watchfulness of the valley, all of it was weaving a cozy spell. Rowan gathered a few more logs and fed the fire, not to make it bigger, but to keep it steady. The flames accepted the wood with a quiet crackle, then settled again into a comfortable rhythm. Rowan lay back on the grass for a moment, still wrapped in the wool blanket. The ground was cool beneath, but not uncomfortable. It felt solid and safe. Rowan looked up at the stars and let the mind drift. In that drifting, the sky seemed to widen. The stars seemed to float closer, as if the distance between the world and the heavens had softened. Rowan imagined each star as a tiny lantern, hung carefully by unseen hands. Lanterns for travelers, lanterns for dreamers, lanterns for anyone who needed a little light in the dark. Rowan's thoughts became slower, more like sensations than sentences. The warmth of the fire, the cool kiss of night air on cheeks, the faint stickiness of melted marshmallow on fingertips, the gentle ache of muscles that had walked far, now grateful to rest. Somewhere in the forest, a branch creaked softly. Somewhere far above, a night bird moved through the sky. The stream kept whispering, never demanding attention, just offering its steady presence. Rowan sat up again, moving slowly, and took one last s'more from the cloth. It was slightly squished now, the chocolate softened in its wrapper, the crackers a bit crumbled at the edges, but it was perfect in its imperfection, like a well-loved pillow. Rowan toasted a final marshmallow, not too long, just enough to warm it through, pressed it between crackers and chocolate, held it a moment to let the heat do its quiet work, then took a small bite, slower than before, letting the sweetness spread and settle. As Rowan chewed, the fire's glow seemed to pulse gently like a heartbeat. The mountain stood steady, and the stars watched kindly. The whole valley felt like a cradle. Rowan finished the last bite and wiped fingertips on the cloth. Then with care, Rowan poured the last sip of tea onto the ground near the fire ring, an old, quiet gesture of thanks. The earth received it without sound. Rowan sat very still for a while, simply listening. Not listening for something specific, but listening in the way you do when you're safe, when you can let the world be exactly what it is. The fire crackled low, the embers glowed, the meadow breathed. Finally, Rowan began to prepare for sleep, unhurried and gentle. The fire did not need to be smothered completely. It was small enough to fade on its own. Rowan nudged the logs into a neat arrangement so the flames would settle into embers. The light softened even more, becoming a warm, low glow. Rowan gathered the cloth and the empty wrappers, leaving the space tidy. Then Rowan stood, stretching slowly, feeling the body's pleasant weight. The wool blanket was wrapped close, and the night air felt cool against skin, refreshing and clean. Rowan walked back toward the cabin, moving through moonlit grass. Each step was slow, as if the feet already knew the rhythm of sleep. The porch light glowed faintly, guiding the way. Inside, the cabin was warm, the stove still holding a gentle heat. The quilts on the window seat looked inviting, piled like soft clouds. Rowan set the blanket down and slipped off boots, moving with quiet care. Before settling in, Rowan opened the window just a little. The night air flowed in, carrying pine scent and the distant hush of the stream. It was cool and soothing, like a final deep breath before sleep. Rowan climbed onto the window seat, nestling into the quilts. The fabric was soft, worn in the best way, as though it had learned the shapes of resting bodies. Rowan pulled a quilt up to the shoulders and let the head sink into a pillow that smelled faintly of lavender and clean linen. Outside, the meadow fire had become a dim orange dot, like a sleepy eye closing. The mountain remained dark and calm, watching over everything without effort. Rowan's breathing slowed. The chest rose and fell in an easy rhythm. The mind drifted, not clinging to thoughts, just floating among sensations. The warmth of quilts, the cool air at the window, the sweetness lingering faintly on the tongue. The valley seemed to grow even quieter, as if it had turned down the world's volume. The stars held steady in the sky, patient and bright. The stream continued its soft song, gentle enough to fade into dreaming. Now the story begins to soften like embers settling into ash. The cabin is quiet, the mountain is quiet, the meadow is quiet. Rowan lies still beneath the quilts, body heavy and warm. The day's journey has ended. The night has offered sweetness and firelight and a calm sky full of stars. Breath moves in and out, slow and easy. In and out, peaceful and steady. Outside, the last glow of the fire fades into darkness, leaving only the moonlight on the grass. The forest holds its gentle secrets. The mountain stands like a calm promise. Rowan's eyelids rest closed now. Thoughts become softer, farther away. The body sinks deeper into comfort, into warmth, into quiet. The air is cool and clean. The quilts are soft and safe. The night is kind. Everything can let go. Everything can slow down. Everything can rest. And as Rowan drifts into sleep, the valley seems to whisper a final blessing, so quiet it is almost only a feeling. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.